This is Jamie Martinet, Senior Director, Music Insights and Industry Relations at Luminate. You're listening to the Your Morning Coffee podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Rob Abelow, 10 predictions on music's future.
From Chris Nilsson in 10th Street Entertainment, the evolving roles and responsibilities of artist management today.
From Variety, what Spotify's new royalty model really means.
And for Music Business Worldwide, the MLC has paid out over $1.5 billion to songwriters to date. Jay and I we were just going over this. We've got so much to cover today. We are glad you're here for episode 170. It's a warm and sunny day here in Southern California, and we are going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. 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 On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, Jay, it's good to see you, and I see you are in a very luxurious hotel suite there in lovely Nashville, Tennessee.
I am in Nashville. I'm here for a few days for meetings, and I got a show tonight. But the show must go on.
The show must go on, and here we are going on, and so many things, as always, to talk about. As always, it was a great week for the newsletter, so many great stories, and we are going to touch on them, and we have so many, and this is going to be a pretty new one for us. We've got 3 audio drops in one episode.
Yeah, and I think we have another 3 next week. There's just, there's been a lot of conversations lately, and it's so great to get it right from the horse's mouth. So, this week we're going to hear from Rob Abelow from wheremusicsgoing.com and the newsletter. Really great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to hear from Chris Nilsson, the president of 10th Street Entertainment. We're also going to hear from Chris Aron, who's the CEO of the MLC. But before we sort of jump in, I wanted to tell our audience that we're recording a special episode next week with our friend Will Page. He wrote that book. It's now called Pivot. Great book. The hardback originally was called Tarzan Economics. Really great book. But he's got a new report out about the music business. And the headline this week was, "It's official, music's $40 billion business. Global value of music copyright ramps up 14% to $41.5 billion in 2022, with publishers clawing back share." That's easy for you to say, but we're going to dig deep into that report with Will this week, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation.
Oh, I can hardly wait to it. And of course, Will is a true economist, and when you talk to him about this stuff, it's just mind-blowing how he digs deep and gets all this information. And it will also cover a lot about why it's important to for these numbers, not only because they're great numbers, but there's some other sort of policy reasons why these are important to know and talk about. So looking forward to that. He's so damn entertaining.
Yeah, no, he's just such a great conversation. Can't wait for you guys to hear this. He's also got a really great podcast that I listen to every single episode called Bubble Trouble. So if you get a chance, check that out. So before we jump into the stories, you and I love Glenn Peoples' Ledger email. Glenn Peoples over at Billboard. And this week it was really super interesting, and it led to a story on Billboard Pro, and the headline was 7 highlights from music companies' quarterly earnings reports. And I thought that was really interesting that he had like these 7 takeaways, because he's the guy that's on those earnings calls and reports back, so you and I know what's really going on in the business.
Oh, totally. And another person with a great sense of humor, by the way, Glenn. So it's fun to read. And again, he digs so deep, and his insights are so valuable for me, because I don't have that knowledge base that he has. And I really appreciate all the hard work he does over at Billboard and in the Ledger. So this one is 7 highlights from music companies' quarterly earnings reports. And it's sort of subtitled in quotation marks, "Merchants of Garbage, Live Music Spending, Rosy Outlooks, and More."
Yeah, and that merchants of garbage, you probably saw that quote from Universal CEO Lucian Grange. The first one of his 7, the headline is, Universal Music Group struck out against quote-unquote merchants of garbage during UMG's October 26th earnings call. Their chairman and CEO, Lucian Grange, he got a lot of attention when he bemoaned the quote-unquote merchants of garbage. That's creators of low-value functional music, such as generic mood music and nature sounds, that want to be on an equal royalty terms with streaming platforms. And, comparing that to, UMG artists like Taylor Swift, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones, he doesn't feel like they have the same value, right? So Lucian Grange's memorial turn of phrase came in defense of UMG's artist-centric royalty scheme, which we've been talking about. And that was crafted in partnership with the French music streaming service, Deezer. He said, quote, "Sorry, I can't really think of another word for content that no one really actually wants to listen to."
It was great. Another one was Spotify's price increase gave a much-needed uplift to subscription revenues. The price for an individual Spotify subscription in the U.S. was $9.99 from 2011 to July of this year. The price hike to $10.99 is roughly 50 markets away. The price hike to $10.99 is roughly 50 markets. In roughly 50 markets, may have arrived later than its competitors, but it came just when Spotify needed a boost. Spotify's premium average revenue per user dropped 6% year over year, 1% at constant currency, mainly because the company had a larger share of family plans compared to its prior year, CFO Paul Vogel said during the July 25 earnings call. Mm-hmm. So we saw this coming, and it's about time. It's amazing it took as long as it did. And I can't think of another thing that is the same price, that was the same price from 2011 to 2023.
No, and that's a good point. And Will Page goes into that in his report that we're going to be talking to him about. And things about adjusting for inflation as well, which even pull it down even further. The third one, no company lowered guidance, and some have raised guidance, right? Sort of their projection. So Sony Music raised guidance for revenue and adjusted operating income before depreciation and amortization by 5% and 4% respectively. So Reservoir Media raised their guidance for fiscal 2024 and adjusted EBITDA by 10%. So I thought that was an interesting point. No company lowered their guidance.
Exactly. The next one is consumers aren't slowing their spending on live music. I am living this one myself. In August, concerns arose that a resumption of student loan payments paused to help people struggling during the pandemic would take a bite out of pocketbooks and cause music fans to pull back on the record amounts they were spending on live entertainment. But 3 months later, there is no indication that consumers are slowing down. According to Live Nation, we're seeing no sign of weakness, said President and CEO Joe Berchtold, noting that Ticketmaster's October sales in North America were up double digits year over year. And I know I'm seeing a lot of shows, and I'm paying through the nose.
Yeah, well, it's supply and demand, right? And there's a really great story in your morning coffee this week all about the record year that Ticketmaster and Live Nation are having. So check that out. The next one was SM Entertainment has big plans for its new publishing subsidiary, Creation Music Rights. And, the K-pop company has aggressively been recruiting global writers and plans to have 80 of them under their contract this year. So watch SM Entertainment this year.
Indeed. The next one is radio advertising continues to struggle, but the clouds may be starting to part. iHeartMedia's October revenues were down 8%, and the company expects its fourth quarter revenue, excluding political revenue, to be down in the mid-single-digit % year over year. The fourth quarter will be iHeartMedia's strongest quarter of the year, but will be weaker than we originally anticipated due to some dampening of advertising demand, which coincided with the uncertainty caused by the recent geopolitical events, said Rob Pittman. He's the CEO over there during the earnings call. That said, iHeart's digital media business is sort of in recovery mode, he said, and the company is seeing the pieces falling into place for radio's recovery, as most advertisers expect to be back in the growth mode and spending to support that in 2024.
Yeah, that was a little surprising. And the last one that was a little surprising, given the news that we've been reading lately, is that it says the market for catalog acquisitions isn't slowing down. Reservoir Media CEO said that catalog prices aren't contracting, meaning getting smaller, despite higher interest rates. He said, we're still seeing a lot of demand for assets and continued infusion of new capital within the competitive set. And he said that during his earnings calls. So super interesting about radio, super interesting that, we've been hearing about all of these catalog acquisitions that we thought maybe were slowing down. But according to Glenn and his great coverage from the Ledger and Billboard, not really the case.
No, sir. Hey, let's thank our sponsors, Jay, before we get rolling a little further, because, man, we certainly appreciate all of their hard work and help to put the show on.
Yeah, first of all, the Your Morning Coffee podcast is brought to you by our friends at Bandzoogle, built by musicians for musicians. Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform. It makes it super easy to build a beautiful website and EPK for your music. All the features you need for a professional website, everything is built right in. Hosting and custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters, very important, social media integrations, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com, try it for free for 30 days. Just use the promo code Morning Coffee, all one word, Morning Coffee, and that'll get you 15% off your first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Morning Coffee.
And big thanks to our newest sponsor, Myco. Discover Myco, your ultimate music companion. Enjoy weekly Zoom sessions and professional assistance with music bios, press releases, and pitches. Access comprehensive databases connecting you with key industry influencers at Spotify, TikTok, music blogs, radio, and more. Stay ahead of the game with regular industry updates, receive immediate support via WhatsApp, and thrive within our vibrant community of passionate musicians. Go to www.themicco.com for more information.
Yeah, and a late-breaking thing on the Myco is there's a special offer for Your Morning Coffee listeners and readers. So go to the newsletter, Your Morning Coffee, for that promo code. We're also brought to you by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton. Thank you, Bruce. With help from Alana Bonilla, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Bands in Town. Over 80 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It is the #1 artist service platform connecting over 590,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Oh, yes, sir. And finally, the Music Business Association. They host an annual slate of in-person and virtual events, so industry professionals like you and me across the globe can come together and discuss hot-button issues and support the growth of the entire music community. Join us for the Music Biz 2024 conference, May 13th through the 16th here in Nashville at the JW Marriott, and we'll see you there. I forgot to mention that I'm here in Nashville this week.
You see you here.
See you right here.
There you go.
There you have
Big
it.
thanks to Bandzoogle, Maiko, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. And every week I get to hang out with this handsome chap right here, Jay Gilbert. He's a music industry consultant. He is the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music, and his own bad self. He is a digital music shaman. Shaman.
I don't
think
know.
it is.
Okay, sounds
Or
good.
is it shaman?
I'll
I don't
take
know.
it. Top
That's
ramen.
right.
It's all good. And this gentleman sitting across from me, I look forward to speaking with every week, sometimes multiple times a week, is Mike Etchart. He's a longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group. And he's the guy that I go to when I want to know what cool music documentaries are out, because he's given me a bunch.
I'm waiting to watch the Milli Vanilli one. I haven't checked it out yet, but it's supposed to be fantastic. I've talked to a lot of people.
Let me know how that is. I saw the the trailer for that. That looked really fun. Before we jump into the stories, one other quick thing is you and I were having this conversation this week about Grammy Best New Artist, because it seems so weird that these artists that are nominated for Best New Artist, some of them have been around for like a decade. And we're like, well, wait a second. What's going on here? And so there was a really cool piece that we found and we looked at from Billboard. It was, the headline was, "Just How New Are the Grammys Best New Artist Nominees?" And that was written by Chris Egerton. And you and I sort of looked that article over. Let's talk about that just for a second, just to give the audience kind of wrap their head around what is a new artist.
Yeah, so this year's crop, announced along with the rest of the Grammy nominees last Friday, includes several acts with notably deep discographies. Now, again, these are allegedly are going to be in the Best New Artist category.
Yeah.
One is Jelly Roll. So he's one of 2023's biggest breakthroughs. Started releasing a long string of albums, though, more than a decade ago. We've also got Victoria Monet. She put out her debut EP way back in 2015.
Wow.
And then a band I really like, actually, The War and Treaty. Prior to releasing this year's Lover's Game, Americana duo The War and Treaty already had 3 albums under their belt and years of experience outside the band before that. So not exactly new artists.
Well, this is far from a new phenomenon, right? Chance the Rapper, who won Best New Artist in 2017, had released 3 albums prior to winning that Grammy. Lizzo had also put out 3 full-length albums, including her breakthrough smash, 'Cause I Love You, prior to her 2020 nomination in that category. And for Best New Artist, the 2011 winner, Esperanza Spalding, had also a trio of albums prior to taking home the award.
So here's what the Recording Academy, I can't even say it. Here's what the Recording Academy has to say about all this. They say our Best New Artist category probably has the most complicated set of rules of any of our categories. Essentially, in quotation marks, new artist is defined for the Grammy process as any performing artist or established performing group who releases during the eligibility year the recording that first establishes the public identity of that artist or established group as a performer. And you know how dogs kind of look at you with kind of a crooked head?
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at that statement with kind of a crooked head.
Well,
I'm
it's,
like, huh?
you know, it's the one that blows up and puts them on the map, right? To be eligible for that category, Best New Artist, the artist, duo, or group must have released a minimum of 5 tracks or 1 album. Eligible artists must have achieved, here's what we were talking about, that breakthrough into the public consciousness and impacted the musical landscape during that year's eligibility period. So sort of clears it up a little bit, but it's a little wonky.
Yeah, that's an understatement, but it is what it is, Jay. We are not going to change that today or this week. So
No.
We move on to our first. This is from our friend Rob Abelow. 10 predictions for music's future, and you got to sit down with him.
I did. We talked about this piece. We posted it in Your Morning Coffee. Rob Abelow has a really great website called Where Music's Going. He's got a great newsletter. Go sign up for it. But I did get a chance to talk to him about his 10 predictions for music's future. Let's let it roll. Rob, it's good to see you. How you doing?
Great. Good to see you as well.
So we were talking about your 10 predictions for music's future, and Mike and I really enjoyed that. Can you walk us through those?
I would love to. I'll just kind of read them off for you here. So these are, 10 predictions that I put together for the next 5 years of music. Kind of boldness may vary on these. Some I think are definitive and some directionally so. So number one, I think we'll see 1 billion music creators. As AI tools help blur the lines between artist and consumer, most will create for an audience of one or in fun, easy, social, gamified experiences. And co-creation and interactivity are going to become the leading driver of music's new growth. Number two, 100 million songs will be released to DSPs each year, and 99% of those will be heard by no one. We are on pace for 40.4 million this year. And if you kind of extend the 20% annual growth rate for the next 5 years that we've seen over the last 5, we'll hit 100.5 million in 2028. And I think we're going to see, AI expanding this. The real thing that's going to restrict it is if music streamers, and with pressure from big labels, become increasingly pay to play. So I think this is the third prediction. This will happen as they look to drive revenue and realize that creators are willing to spend far more money than consumers ever will for mass consumption. They'll charge for things like playlist pitching, annual track hosting, boosts to reach your own audience. And initial versions of this are already happening. We're seeing this with Spotify turning into a two-sided marketplace, and how in their investor decks, they're talking about marketplace growth, and that's what that refers to. And the music industry is mostly happy to pay to cut in line for a sliver of people's attention. I think the experience at these platforms will deteriorate, and discerning fans will find other options. This is known as something called platform enshittification. Great article in Wired to go check out about that. Number 4, Taylor Swift is the last of music's global megastars. We'll never see an artist gain this level of multi-generational awareness again. Artists will sell out arenas, sell tons of albums, billions of streams, and have tons of fans, perhaps even more than Taylor. But most people will not be aware of who they are, at least on the same level. Number 5, I call the great artists unbundling and maybe rebundling. We'll see a major shift in the artist fan experience away from mega platforms that bundle all artists together as content to artist-centric platforms that bundle each artist's music, art, engagement, membership, and commerce into one. Most of the passive consumption will still happen on the mega platforms, but, and number 6, mega platforms and majors will end up missing out on this quote-unquote super fan opportunity. They're built for mass consumption and feed the lowest common denominator. But fandom is much more bespoke, and it happens at the artist level, not really at the platform level. And entirely new tools that center the artist fan and fan-to-fan relationships will win. Number 7 is an AI artist plays Coachella's main stage. So this is like an AI designed artist with a fully synthetic, quote unquote, original voice. It'll be backed by an unknown anonymous creator who will play the main stage at Coachella. Think kind of like the 2028 version of Daft Punk. Number 8 is what I'm calling the marvelization of music. Major catalog owners churn out music's version of sequels using AI and their deep catalogs to exploit timeless material for continued profit. So they'll generate new songs, create derivatives, and bring dead artists back to life in a myriad of ways. Anything to extend blue chip material and IP. Catalog and its reincarnations will take increasing priority over new music for the biggest players. It's a hell of a lot easier to keep exploiting known material through these means than to try to break new artists and new music. Number 9, the rise of collectives. New forms of collectives will partially fill the role of labels and curators, offering collaboration and resource sharing while challenging traditional industry hierarchies. They'll become the artist launchpads. The superpower they will hold and that few others have is authentic, engaged audiences. I mean, means of distribution that are meaningful are harder and harder to come by. And I think this can potentially be a place that happens. Number 10 is a new artist sells out arenas without releasing any music on traditional platforms, solely through grassroots, community-centric growth, bypassing conventional platforms entirely. Instead of competing against the noise, they'll create their own space outside of it. And community building becomes the most important skill for artists, which I was going to say is really how it's always been, but just even more so and with new tools.
I think these predictions are spot on, and Mike and I talk about them quite a bit. It's going to be fun to kind of watch things evolve and change and sort of check in with you to see how some of these things are evolving.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, I'm somewhat on the money on at least most of these, so I don't look like a fool. But I think directionally, it kind of gives a sense of where we're moving.
Yeah. Rob, tell people where they can find more about you, about where music's going, your blog and newsletter.
Yeah, so wheremusicsgoing.com or on Twitter, AbeloRob, or if they want to find me on LinkedIn, I do a lot of daily stuff in those places. And they can subscribe and follow along the newsletters about once a week.
Love your work, Rob. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jay.
It's fun to have him tell the story, actually.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything he said.
Yeah, I do too. Really interesting to have him check in and do this for us. And again, this is really fun because we have 3 audio drops on this for this week's episode, which has been a blast.
Yeah, very unusual.
Very unusual, but very cool. Kind of nice to hear from everyone and see what they have to say. The next one is from Chris Nilsson at 10th Street Entertainment, the evolving roles and responsibilities of artist management today. And boy, oh boy, I mean, you could, things have changed so dramatically in the last, call it 2 decades, as we've moved to a streaming business. And you have so many artists that are jumping in and out of different relationships with labels and doing self-releasing and so many things to contemplate. It is just, being an artist manager has always been hard, but now it is mind-numbingly hard.
Yeah, and it's evolving like crazy. And you'll remember back in the day, there were a handful of managers that they were like rebels. They started doing things differently and started taking on the roles and responsibilities of labels in some ways and distribution in some ways. People like Howard Kaufman and Irving Azoff and Jonathan Daniel and some of these groundbreaking managers. So as you know, I'm part of a artist management collective, and we get together and we share best practices. And it's something that came out of the pandemic lockdown, and to this day has really been just a joy for me to work with some of these people. But a while back, I wrote a piece for Hypebot about the evolving roles of labels versus distribution, because they're blurring. Distribution's doing things that labels used to do, like advances and sync licensing and all this stuff. Anyway, to set this up, I had a chance to talk to the president of 10th Street Entertainment. You know them for managing bands like Motley Crue. And this is Chris Nilsson, who is super smart. And I'm so thankful that he takes the time to sort of walk through the evolving roles and responsibilities of artist management today. So let's listen in on that conversation. Chris, good to see you again. How are you?
Great to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about, kicking off with sort of your strategy when it comes to artist management, because artist management has really evolved. There were pioneers like Howard Kaufman and Irving Azoff who really started doing more than just maybe touring and started really getting involved in brand partnerships and all other parts of an artist's business. Talk about what you've built at 10th Street and how roles and responsibilities for artist management have evolved.
Sure. I think if you look at the evolution of artist management, it used to be that an artist was, in the bus all day, and there was no internet. There were no cell phones. Maybe when you got to the gas station, you could stop and make a phone call, or at the hotel you could get a fax, that kind of thing. So I think in a lot of ways the manager was a proxy for the artist, because the manager would sit in an office all day, and have access to the phone and the fax machine and all of that. So I think back then there was a lot of that. I think there are some great examples, and certainly the managers that I really respect. I think like the Shep Gordon School of Management, which is really about, how do I create the most value for my artist? How do I come up with creative ideas and creative strategies and plans that the artist may not come up with themselves? So it's really, and just to go back to Shep, I've always considered him, almost as much of an artist as a manager. There are things that his clients did and were able to do that drastically affected their careers, because of things that he came up with. So I think our approach is really how can we be great creative partners? How can every day we think about what's the value that we can create and provide that the artist may not be thinking about themselves, and then how do we go and execute that so that as a result of the partnership between the artist and the manager, they are achieving a lot more than they would on their own. I think the days of the proxy, or the manager as proxy for the artist, I think are over. I certainly know a few managers like that are still, you have to go through me, and all they do is really, try and beat up labels, and they never come up with any ideas themselves. And, more power to them if that works for them. But it's certainly not how I like to think. And it's certainly not, at the end of the day, the artist has to pay us. And, I want them to pay us for things that they can't do themselves. So that's really like how we try and think here.
Yeah, it sounds like your approach is just a lot more collaborative.
Yeah, I think so. And I also look at like a great manager, like a great sports coach. And, I know sports analogies are a little tired and cliche, but I suppose people use them because they work.
Exactly.
But, you want to be able to help the artist find things in themselves that maybe they didn't even know that they could do. You want to push them, you want to give them the resources so they can be the best that they can be. When they're in periods of self-doubt or, those kinds of things, you want to get them through that so that they can, win the game. I say that kind of rolling my eyes, but it's true. The cliche works because it's true.
Yeah, it works. There's a great report out this week by Dan Runcie over at Trapital, and one of the sections focuses on monetization and sort of super serving the super fan. And as you know, for most artists, streaming revenue is only one small slice of that revenue pie. How do you approach all of the various revenue streams today when you're advising your artists?
Well, it's a big question. In terms of the super fan and how we're set up, I mean, we have a whole department that is engaged solely in creating the relationship between the band and the individual fan. So what does that mean? That means getting them as much, exclusive content, as we can, working with the artist to try and carve out things that we can do for those super fans, running subscription programs, but also, a big part of that is the back end data analysis. So we're looking at really profiling, each individual fan, where they live, what their purchasing habits are, to very granular things like, if they buy 20 t-shirts out of the year, what are the colors that they're buying? What do the designs look like? We're really trying to get, very granular, like not in a creepy Cambridge Analytica way, but, in a way where we can, cut out all of the noise, and get them really only what they want. And I think that that's really crucial today because there's so much competition. There's so much music. You pull up Spotify or Apple or whichever platform you use, and you're fed 100 different artists, and it's difficult to sift through that. So we really try and help the fan along to get them exactly what they want, so that we can target programs and shows and merch offerings and new music and all of that in a very tailored way.
Yeah, it sounds like you're focused more on real engagement and not just some vanity numbers.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, the evolution of social media has shown us that that's absolutely crucial. It used to be even like, I think back in the MySpace days, it was like, how many like MySpace friends can we amass? And, this is before, the sort of creepy algorithms of today's social media platforms, where, if you had 1 million friends and you put up a message, chances are most of them would see it. If they're going on the platform, today it's like, it's pay to play, and it gets harder and harder. So, I think it's really, really crucial for artists to have the relationship with their fans. Yes, on social media, it's a great point of entry, but if the artist is going to have a long-term career and be able to, directly target their fans, they have to move them off of social media and into a platform that they control.
Yeah. When do you think an artist is ready for representation with a manager?
I don't think that there's one answer to that. I think at least how we look at it, we just look at, is the artist in a place where what we do can really help them? We don't like to just sign up a bunch of artists and wait around for, them to hit. Like, I really feel strongly about us being able to do a good job for whomever we're working, whether it's a brand new artist or, an artist that's been around for 40 years. Just personal experience of recently is, we found a new artist, and I mean, this kid is one of the best singers I've ever heard. And very young, hasn't really put out that much content, but when you listen to him sing, and you listen to some of the songs that he's written, you just go, I know exactly what to do. We get him with the right writers and producers and help coach him along. And, I really feel like there's a pretty clear path, as I see it. So despite the fact he's really young, and doesn't have 2 million monthly listeners on Spotify yet, I don't really care, because, when I hear him sing, I just go, this kid is amazing. And if we do the right things, then we think he can make it. There's other artists where, the space may be more competitive, and the kind of music that they're doing. Maybe there's a bit of a question about, can they compete? You might say they're not quite ready for management because, they haven't necessarily figured out who they are yet. And, it's tough for us to give the artist, a vision. So if they don't have it themselves. So I just think it all depends on whether or not we look at a particular act or artist and say, is what we do and what they do, is that going to be a good fit at this point in time? So I guess the short answer is it could be all kinds of different combinations of things that make us go, yeah, we think this artist is ready for representation.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a lot more complex than what cap rooms they're playing or how many streams they're getting or what their social footprint is. There's a lot more that goes into it.
Sure, I think like the narrative often likes to distill things down to really simple formulas, and as we see in anything, the world is oftentimes much more complex than, the sound bites that we try and make out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Let's keep the conversation going.
No, thank you.
Wow. Excellent information. Really fascinating.
Yeah. So thankful he took the time to walk us through all of that. So thanks again, Chris.
Indeed. So, Jay, story number 3 is from Variety. What Spotify's new royalty model really means.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about this for a while, I think.
Well, there's been some confusion the last couple of weeks since it's been announced. In this piece, you and I love Variety. This was written by Jem Oswald, and you and I are huge fans of his writing. And I thought he laid it out so perfectly what this royalty model really means.
Yes, it starts with, as news about Spotify's new payment model has tortuously dribbled out, details have been leaked through sources with little official comment from the company. It is not surprising that controversy has accompanied it. Streaming royalty models are deeply complicated, and Spotify, the world's largest paid streaming service by a long measure, has borne the brunt of the world's frustration with the low royalties that most artists and especially songwriters receive from digital service providers.
Right. Several articles and headlines, they really seized on a major point of the new model, which rolls out next year, revealed last week in an article by Kristen Graziani, president of the music distributor STEM, and everybody's been talking about that. That tracks earning less than 1,000 streams within 12 months will not receive a royalty payment. But according to Spotify's Loud and Clear website, just 37.5 million tracks out of the more than 100 million on Spotify have surpassed over 1,000 streams, meaning that 2/3 of all the songs hosted by Spotify have not reached that payment plateau, while 2/3 of the songs on Spotify will not qualify for a payment. It's certainly an alarming headline. Some perspective is necessary, though. The following Cliff Notes version is intentionally brief, so let's dig into it.
Yeah, so he says, first, it needs to be stressed just how little money 1,000 streams actually generate. As noted by Graziano, 1,000 streams in a 12-month period accounts for, wait for it, $3 in earnings at most.
That's crazy.
$3. Far below what most distributors will bother paying out without a fee significantly more than $3. Yet, many distributors simply hang on to that money. Thousands of artists earning $3 does add up, and it earns interest for them rather than the artist. In other words, Graziano says, this is money that isn't currently making it to artists in the first place. Indeed.
That's super interesting. The move is also aimed at lowering or eliminating the royalties earned by fraudulent streams. Again, those small payments add up. And quote-unquote functional tracks like White Noise and the much vaunted Rain on the Rooftop environmental sounds, remember that we just talked about with Lucian Grange, Spotify's new model will also charge financial penalties to distributors and labels for uploading tracks with fraudulent activity.
Yeah, interesting. In theory, the money directed away from those streams will then increase the royalty pool for musicians and songwriters. Spotify has said that the new minimum will shift tens of millions of dollars per year to the royalty pool, which some sources have estimated at $46 million. That's significant.
No, it's not. And as Graziano stresses, some critics will point out legitimate concerns that I may have missed. She wrote, I hope Spotify takes those critiques seriously and makes adjustments, but some critics will make arguments purely out of self-interest. This is a line in the sand. Sorry, my screen dropped. This is a line in the sand moment for labels and distributors. We'll all have to ask ourselves if we want to make our living by enabling legitimate artists to have success in their careers, or by, what Lucian Grange said, merchants of garbage.
That's right. Well, lots of things to be thinking about and talking about as the details become a little bit more clear and this stuff gets happening. And it's going to be very interesting, Jay. Very interesting indeed.
Yeah, that was a great piece by Jem Oswald. Thanks for clearing that up. It's not as horrific as you might have read from the headlines in the last couple of weeks. In our last story this week, you saw the headline from Music Business Worldwide that the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective, has paid out over $1.5 billion to songwriters to date. And I just thought that was such a massive milestone. And you and I are friends with Chris Arend, the CEO of the MLC. We have a great deal of respect for the work that they're doing over there. So I thought it'd be great to hear it from the horse's mouth, because they're doing a lot of innovations over there and they're bringing in a lot of revenue for the songwriters. So let's listen in to my conversation with Chris Arend, the CEO of the MLC. Chris, thanks for joining me. Good to see you again.
Hey, Jay. Great to be here.
So the MLC held its third annual membership meeting recently. You announced a significant milestone. The MLC has now distributed over $1.5 billion, with a B, dollars in royalties to date. Congratulations. What were some of the other highlights coming out of that meeting?
Well, thanks, Jay, for recognizing that. And yeah, big number for sure. And the amounts keep growing. That was the product of completing 31 monthly royalty distributions, all on time or early. So we certainly feel good about having gotten that monthly distribution process up and running, and having been able to deliver it in such a dependable, consistent way. We also have now more than 32,000 members. I think we're approaching 33,000 members. So
wow.
The sheer number of rights holders connected to us has grown pretty significantly. The public database has more than 33 million works, or I should say data for more than 33 million works. So that's another big number.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, our support team. We continue to try to make service a part of everything we do. That team has responded to more than 65,000 contacts. And I like to say they are far more responsive than the cable company. So again, we're there to work with members one-on-one and really provide them the support and the assistance that they need to ensure the MLC can be successful for them.
Wow, congratulations on that. I wanted to ask you about the black box. Can you elaborate on how the MLC has sort of effectively addressed the black box by empowering members with various tools like this new matching tool?
Yeah, well, we like to say now that we have fully illuminated the black box in the area of digital mechanicals for the first time in history. And that is a significant development. So what that means is that any member of ours can see and search all of the unmatched sound recording data that we have, whether it be for the historical periods that predated our launch or the blanket periods. And once they find a set of uses, a group of uses that they think relate to one of their songs, they can then propose a match between those uses and a song that they've registered with us. So by doing that, everyone can now see what isn't connecting, and everyone can play a part in trying to make those connections. But of course, most importantly, you as the rights holder can do that for your songs. So while we're certainly working on that unmatched every month, we have now opened it up so that every rights holder can work on it for themselves. And it's that illumination combined with the ability to action it that has effectively changed the entire paradigm there. It's no longer a black box. It's a visible box. And there's certainly a lot in there. The challenges that led to the creation of the black box are not gone. We still see data issues with the upstream process. And then, of course, data issues within ours that we are trying to improve. But that visibility is key, and it's a huge part of the transparency that the MMA intended to deliver.
Yeah, congratulations on the milestone, the innovations, continued success. I'll be checking in with you a little bit later. Thanks again, Chris.
Appreciate it, Jay. Take care.
Yep.
Excellent. It is hard work, and this is kind of the trench warfare of the music business, which is finding money, finding dollars and sometimes even pennies elsewhere, and how to bring that back to the folks that are actually doing the work. And
that's right. And you and I talk about this a lot, right? About how, the songwriters are the foundation of this business, and yet they're the least paid and probably the most screwed over the years. And we have people like, Chris Castle, who's out there fighting the good fight, making sure that these frozen rates are unfrozen. And we've got people like Chris Arend and his team who are making sure that these people are, you ready for it, properly remunerated.
A word that still
I know, it just does not sound right, does it?
No, I want that M to be an N, but
I know,
whatever.
I know.
Hey, we got to wrap up the show, though, Jay. If you enjoy the show, by the way, please tell one friend.
Just
Jay
one.
and I both would appreciate it greatly. We want to thank Bandzoogle, Myco, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. But most importantly, thank you, the listener. We do not take that for granted, and we certainly appreciate it. So on that note, your friends Jay and I will be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.